0115 local time. Iranian Coastal Defense Command, Bandar Abbas. The radar operator is staring at his screen and the picture is wrong. A contact appeared for half a second over the Persian Gulf, then dropped off. No transponder, no squawk, no track. He waits. 12 seconds later, it ghosts back onto the screen 70 kilometers closer to the coast, then gone again. He has never seen a Tomahawk return that small. Iran has been studying this missile for 20 years. They know its profile. They know its altitude band. They know what it looks like on radar. This is not what it looks like. The duty officer pulls the threat library on his console. The signature on his screen does not match anything in the recognition database. Not a Tomahawk, not an LRASM, not a JASSM. He calls it up the chain. Across the Gulf, 400 kilometers south, the USS Spruance has just emptied a Mark 41 cell. The missile that came out of it was glossy black. Iran has 8 minutes before the first impact. Operation Epic Fury just opened with a weapon that was hiding in plain sight. CENTCOM imagery hits the wires 4 hours later. Defense analysts pull the still frame and start arguing in the comments. The Tomahawk in the photograph is not haze gray. For 40 years, every operational Tomahawk has been haze gray. This one is black. Munitions analyst Colby Badwar is the first to call it. The coating matches the AGM-1588 CLRASM. Janes confirms the assessment within the day. It has a name, RGM-109. Block 5, a maritime strike Tomahawk. Multi-mode seeker, two-way data link, radar-absorbent skin, and it just made its combat debut. There is a second part to this story, and when you hear it, you will understand why Iran's 20-year study of the Tomahawk did not save a single ship in the Persian Gulf, and why one detail buried in a public Pentagon slide deck proves the Navy was not hiding this weapon at all. The Strait, the Tomahawk, and Iran's 20 years. To understand why the radar operator at Bandar Abbas had no answer for what he was looking at, you need to understand what Iran spent the last 2 decades preparing for. The Tomahawk cruise missile entered service in 1983. Subsonic, low altitude, range over 1,000 kilometers, launched from a vertical cell on a destroyer that does not need to be anywhere near the target. By the 1991 Gulf War, the world had seen what it could do to fixed infrastructure. By 2003, Iraq had seen it again. By the 2017 Shirat strike, Syria had seen it. By every year between, Iran had been watching, recording, and updating its air defense doctrine to track exactly what a haze-gray Tomahawk looks like at 50 meters above the Gulf. They built that doctrine around 3 assumptions. Assumption 1. The Tomahawk's radar return is detectable. Not large, not easy, but detectable. The skin of a Block 4 is aluminum and composites, painted haze gray. The radar cross-section of a haze gray Tomahawk is small, but it is a known number, and Iranian SAM operators trained on simulated Tomahawk profiles for 2 decades. The Bavar 373 system was developed specifically to engage low-altitude cruise missiles in the Persian Gulf threat environment. Detection range against a Block 4 in clear conditions, published by Iranian state media in 2019, was 60 kilometers. That 60-kilometer figure is what every Iranian air defense battery position was placed around. Assumption 2. GPS jamming degrades the Tomahawk's accuracy. Iran has invested heavily in electromagnetic warfare. Mobile jammers, ground-based emitters, signal denial across the Gulf. The theory was sound. Knock out GPS, push the missile off course, force it to abort, or hit empty desert. Assumption 3. Tomahawks come in waves. The destroyer screen can be tracked and the launches can be counted. Each Arleigh Burke carries up to 96 Mark 41 cells. Iran knew the math, knew the salvo sizes, knew that once a destroyer fires its load, it has to leave the theater to reload. 20 years of doctrine, 20 years of simulation, 20 years of the Iranian Navy and the IRGC building a defensive picture around exactly what they thought a U.S. cruise missile campaign would look like. Then, February 28, 2026 happened. 01:15 East Coast time, the opening hours of Operation Epic Fury. CENTCOM struck more than 1,000 targets in the first 24 hours. The opening barrage came almost entirely from Mark 41 cells in the Persian Gulf and the Arabian Sea. USS Spruance, USS Delbert D. Black, USS Thomas Hudner, Arleigh Burke-class destroyers running fire missions back to back. The water in the Gulf went white from VLS launches. Iran activated the doctrine. The jammers came up. The Bavar 3-7-3 batteries went hot. The radar operators across the southern coast started building tracks on the inbound profiles their training had told them to expect. The tracks did not build. Some contacts appeared and dropped within the same sweep. Some never appeared at all until the impact. Some impacts had no inbound radar warning. The first wave got through targets that should have been protected. The second wave got through targets that had been on alert for hours. Then CENTCOM released the imagery, and every analyst with a copy of the slide deck recognized the coding. The Black Tomahawk reveal. The RGM-109 Block 5, a maritime strike. Tomahawk does 3 things. The Haze Gray Block 4 does not. First, the skin glossy radar absorbent material, the same family of coating used on the AGM-158CL RASM, the Navy's also stealth anti-ship missile. The black color is the coating. RAM is engineered to absorb incoming radar energy and dissipate it as heat instead of reflecting it back to the receiver. The radar return does not disappear, it collapses to a fraction of the cross-section the receiver was trained to expect. A Bavar 373 operator scanning for a Tomahawk return is scanning for a specific signal strength. The Block VA return falls below that strength. The system sees noise, the operator sees nothing, the missile keeps flying. The Iranian 60-kilometer detection figure does not apply. The window in which a Block VA is visible to a Bavar 373 is not 60 kilometers, it is closer. By the time the operator sees the contact, the Tomahawk is already inside the engagement timeline. The math the entire Iranian coastal defense was placed around no longer works. That is layer 1 of the futuristic weapon. Iran had no profile for it because the profile they trained on was 20 years out of date. Second, the brain. The Block VA carries a multi-mode seeker, 3 guidance modes operating simultaneously. Radio frequency for detecting and homing on enemy radar emissions, imaging infrared for visual target identification at terminal range, GPS-assisted navigation for mid-course updates. That is not the upgrade. The upgrade is what supports them, TerraCom, terrain contour matching. The missile carries a digital map of the elevation profile along its flight route, and it compares the actual terrain it flies over against the stored map in real time. DSMAC, Digital Scene Matching Area Correlation. At terminal range, it compares the visual scene below it to a reference image and corrects to the target. The flight altitude is 30 meters above ground level, below the radar horizon for most ground-based sensors, below most terrain features. The missile flies between hills, not over them. Through wadis, down riverbeds, the terrain map tells it where every elevation change is, and the inertial navigation system flies the route. GPS goes down. TERCOM and DSMAC keep flying. Inertial navigation keeps flying. The Block 5A does not need GPS to find the target. GPS is supplementary input. Iran's electromagnetic warfare investment was built on assumption 2, that knocking out GPS degrades the missile. According to the Observer Research Foundation, within hours of Operation Epic Fury opening, Iranian internet connectivity dropped to approximately 4% of normal traffic levels. A deliberate Iranian shutdown intended to deny the U.S. battlefield intelligence and disrupt coordination. Combined with active GPS jamming across the theater, the strategy was effective against some weapon systems. The Block VA is not one of them. The Block VA does not degrade. The Block VA flies the terrain. That is layer 2. Iran had no answer for it because the missile is not navigating on the system Iran was attacking. Third, the leash, 2-way data link. Once the Block VA is in flight, the launching ship or any authorized command node can retarget it. The original target is destroyed by another asset. The missile gets a new one mid-flight. The original target moves. The missile gets the updated coordinates. A higher priority target appears. The missile diverts. The Haze Gray Block 4 is fire and forget. You launch it, you commit to the target list, the missile flies the plan. The Block 5A is a weapon you can re-aim while it is in the air. That is layer 3. Iran had no countermeasure for it because the targeting picture is being updated faster than Iranian assets can move. Now run all 3 layers simultaneously and look at what Bandar Abbas was facing that morning. The skin is below the radar threshold. The brain navigates without GPS. The leash means every missile that is already airborne can be reassigned to whatever target Iran has just exposed by trying to defend the previous target. Iran's 20-year doctrine was built on 3 assumptions. The Block V maritime strike Tomahawk broke all 3 in the same flight. By 01:23 local time, the first impacts hit. 8 minutes from the launch, the radar operator detected the first dropped contact. Iranian command posts, air defense radars, communication relays. The targets that should have been protected by the Bavar 373 envelope were destroyed inside the envelope. By the end of day 1, CENTCOM had hit more than 1,000 targets. By the end of week 1, Iranian Navy Command had lost the ability to coordinate a fleet-level response. By March 4, 2026, the IRIN Dina was at the bottom of the Indian Ocean. The Dina was an Iranian frigate commissioned in 2021. Domestically built at the Bandar Abbas shipyards, the flagship of an Iranian Navy modernization program that had taken 15 years to deliver, 2,000 tons displacement, anti-ship missiles, anti-air missiles, a Russian-supplied phased array radar, one of the most capable surface combatants in the Iranian fleet. She was not in the Persian Gulf, she was in the Indian Ocean, 1,500 kilometers from home, on a deployment Iran had been using to project naval presence across the region. A U.S. Navy submarine put a torpedo into her hull off the coast of Sri Lanka. Of 180 sailors aboard, 32 were rescued, 101 were reported missing. The remainder unaccounted for at the time of this recording. President Trump publicly stated the U.S. had sunk 9 unspecified Iranian warships. CENTCOM has not released the full list. Janes is tracking the count from open-source imagery and commercial satellite passes over Iranian ports. The Block V maritime strike Tomahawk did not sink the Dina. A submarine did. But the Block V is what cleared the airspace that allowed every other U.S. asset in the theater to operate without contested coverage. The Tomahawks went first, everything else followed. That is the futuristic weapon doing its job, not winning the battle by itself, removing every assumption Iran had built its defense around and letting the rest of the U.S. Navy work in an environment where Iran's air defense network no longer functions. Iran had 38 ships at the start of Operation Epic Fury. By the end of the first month, more than 100 Iranian vessels had been damaged or destroyed. 20 years of doctrine, 1 coding, 1 seeker, 1 data link. The Pentagon PowerPoint, re-hook the Block V maritime strike. Tomahawk was not a secret. Naval Air Systems Command, NAVAIR, released unclassified briefing slides in 2025, public release, on a U.S. Navy website. Available for download to anyone with an internet connection, the slides covered the Tomahawk modernization roadmap, variants, capabilities, production timeline. One of those slides showed the Block V, not labeled stealth, not labeled classified, just sitting in a development timeline next to the Block 4 and Block 5 variants, a dark-colored missile in a Pentagon graphic. Defense analysts noted the unusual coloring at the time. Some posted about it on industry forums. One munitions tracker asked publicly whether the coding on the slide was render artifact or an actual variant. The Navy did not respond. Nobody had operational confirmation the variant was actually fielded. Iran's intelligence services had access to the same slides. Iran's Signals Intelligence Directorate has analysts assigned specifically to monitoring U.S. Navy unclassified releases. The slides were on their desks. The weapon that broke Iran's air defense doctrine in the opening hours of Operation Epic Fury was hiding in a PowerPoint deck on a public Pentagon website. For an entire year before launch, anyone in the world could have downloaded the file. Iran had the slides. Iran had 20 years of Tomahawk study. Iran did not believe the slides. That is the part of this story that does not get covered. The Black Tomahawk was not hidden by classification. It was hidden by the assumption that the U.S. Navy would not deploy it before announcing it operationally. By the time Iran reassessed, the missile was already in the air over Bandar Abbas. And there is one more detail, the CSIS analysis. After the first month of Operation Epic Fury landed with a number nobody in the defense press wanted to print. More than 850 Tomahawks fired in 30 days, the largest cruise missile expenditure in U.S. military history. Larger than 1991, larger than 2003, larger than every Tomahawk strike of the Syrian Civil War combined. CSYS assessed the 850 figure as approximately half of the currently available launchers in the Middle East region. The U.S. Navy will receive 110 new Tomahawks in fiscal year 2026. The total existing stockpile is estimated in the low 3,000s, replenishing what was fired in a single month at the production rate of slightly over 100 per year takes years. CSIS wrote it directly. Replenishing inventory after Epic Fury creates near-term risk for the United States. The campaign that broke Iran's navy consumed the cruise missile stocks the United States would need for a Pacific contingency. The numbers. By March 28, 2026, the public count from CENTCOM and Jane's more than 8,000 Iranian targets struck, more than 130 Iranian vessels damaged or destroyed. The IRIN Dina at the bottom of the Indian Ocean, 101 sailors missing, 9 Iranian warships sunk according to direct White House statement. The 4 Soleimani-class warships, Iran's most capable surface combatants, confirmed destroyed. 850 Tomahawks fired, approximately half the currently available launchers in the Middle East region. Replenishment at 110 per year, existing global stockpile in the low 3,000s. The largest Tomahawk barrage in the history of the weapon, the first combat use of the RGM-109 Block 5A Maritime Strike Tomahawk, 8,000 targets, 1 coating. The math is in iron on the seabed of the Persian Gulf and the floor of the Indian Ocean. Resolution and forward threat. The Iranian Navy that existed before Operation Epic Fury does not exist now. The doctrine Iran built around the haze-gray Tomahawk does not apply to the missile that flew that morning. The electromagnetic warfare investment that targeted GPS does not degrade a missile that navigates on terrain. The radar profiles trained for 20 years are profiles for an aircraft skin the Block 5A does not have. The Strait of Hormuz remains contested. Mines are still in the water. The work continues. But the question coming out of Operation Epic Fury is not whether the Black Tomahawk worked. The answer to that is on the seabed. The question is what the next opponent does with the knowledge that mature radar-absorbent coatings can now be retrofitted onto existing missile inventories at scale. Every navy operating Russian-derived S-300 or S-400 air defense systems is reassessing its threat picture. China is reassessing its threat picture. Russia is reassessing its threat picture. The radar return Iran could not see is the same radar return every modern air defense system was trained to see. If the U.S. Navy can paint a Block 4 inventory black and turn the entire stockpile into a low observable weapon, every air defense network on the planet just had its margin of safety reduced. The Block 5A is now a known weapon. The next variant is not. And the United States Navy that fired 850 Tomahawks in 30 days now has to answer one question. The Pacific is the largest body of water on the planet. The targets in any future Pacific contingency are spread across thousands of kilometers. The Tomahawk inventory the Navy would need to engage those targets is the inventory that just got fired into Iran. Production is 110 per year. The campaign that just closed consumed 850. If a Pacific contingency arrives in 2027, what fills the empty cells? Iran spent 20 years studying the Tomahawk. The Navy painted the new one black.